Coming up in the news, salt level remains a concern on Grand Bahama. Also, the Deputy Prime Minister weighing in on the ongoing battle between the Bahamas Mortgage Corp and homeowners. And a veteran junkanooer inducted in the Junkanoo Hall of Fame. The Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition starts now.
This is the Bahamas Tonight, Northern Edition.
This is the Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition. Good evening, all. I'm Shashina Wolf-Farquharson. As always, it is so great to have you with us. Topping the news, salinity levels in city water 3 months after Hurricane Dorian remains a concern. Megan Shepard tells us that the salt level is not the only challenge facing the utility company at this time.
The Grand Bahama Port Authority conducting leak detection and valve rehabilitation in the Hawksbill community. Utility Engineering Manager Remington Wilshcombe says that the infrastructure was destroyed during Hurricane Dorian.
This in particular doesn't really affect the water quality. What we're doing here is some modification to the infrastructure to provide water to certain areas that is higher in quality than in other areas.
Wilshcombe says that they are conducting their surveys throughout the island.
There was a lot of infrastructure damage, and therefore we've been doing assessments throughout the island, discovering that we have some underground infrastructure that was damaged, and a lot of it pretty much stayed intact.
Now, Waugh Construction is working with the Port Authority to ensure a smooth reconstruction process. President Godfrey Waugh says the exercise should be completed in about 2 weeks.
We were enlisted to procure materials and trench and install new 8-inch pipe at Grand Bahama Way and West Wind Road in Hawksbill. That's going to allow them to connect an existing 8-inch line to an existing 6-inch cast iron line to complete a loop, which I think will allow them to pump better water into the industrial sector and into other areas of Hawksbill.
Now, when it comes to the overall quality of city water, Wilshcombe says it is a work in progress.
We're continuing our surveying and assessment of all of our well fields. We're doing daily monitoring of all of our well fields, monitoring the water quality. We're also assisting that water quality to come back to what it's supposed to be. Well, what we had before, which was under 1,000 parts per million, which is recommended by the World Health Organization. The water quality is getting better. What I mean by parts per million, that's pretty much particles, TDS, which is total dissolved solids in the water. One of those solids is salt, which came from the seawater that overwashed all of our well fields during the storm. So seawater is at 35,000. Our water right now is at 2,800, and we're trying to get it below 1,000. So what we're doing, we have different pumping regimes and strategies we put in place where we're pumping that seawater out 24/7. We're helping Mother Nature bring back our fresh water as fast as possible.
Megan Shepard, ZNS Network News.
Thanks, Megan. Meantime, the Deputy Prime Minister giving his take tonight on the ongoing battle between the Bahamas Mortgage Corporation and homeowners here in Freeport. Several homeowners have come forward accusing the Mortgage Corporation of protracted processing of funds. They say with the holiday season approaching, they are still living in less than ideal conditions. They accuse the corporation of inhumane and uncaring practices. Now, as you will hear in this report, the Deputy Prime Minister is talking about this concern. There has been a public outcry on the policies of the Bahamas Mortgage Corporation insurance payouts post-Hurricane Dorian. Some clients telling ZNS News that they have been expected to start repairs before receiving the first payment or being forced to have the arrears taken out of their insurance checks. Well, we caught up with Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Peter Turnquest, this past weekend, who made it clear that he does not think it is reasonable for any lending institution to ask clients to pay for construction repairs repairs to their homes before receiving their insurance payments.
Again, I think it's one of the things we have to have a conversation on, because most people who have gone through the storm have suffered significant personal loss, whether it is a car or furnishings or clothing. Some people have lost everything, and so to expect that they can find this money to make this initial repair is stretching. It's very difficult and quite frankly maybe unfair. So I think the reason you have insurance is to be able to repair the property, and so those funds, regardless of who pays first, it should be applied to the repair, and to the extent that the deductible has been met, then I think the persons ought to be allowed to carry on with the repair from the insurance proceeds.
In fact, he says just last week he had a conversation with the clearing banks about persons not being able to use Dorian insurance payouts as they are being applied to arrears.
But as I explained to them, if you do that and deprive the homeowner of the funds they need to restore their property, then you're really creating double jeopardy, because what happens is the person cannot stay in their home, meaning they have to rent accommodations. So now they're spending money to rent an accommodation. They still have to pay the mortgage, and so they have to pay the mortgage, and they can't repair the house because, again, rent and mortgage payments are taking up the money that they would have ordinarily may be able to use to help offset the insurance shortfall that we all know with respect to deductibles. The homeowner should not benefit or profit from the circumstance, particularly when there's an arrears. But to just apply the bulk of the money or so much of the insurance claim that they're not able to affect the basic repairs, I think is an unfair situation for both sides, both the bank as well as, or the lending institution as well as for the homeowner. And nobody wins in that instance.
The Bahamas Mortgage Corporation is a government lending financial institution, and the Deputy Prime Minister says a dialogue will have to take place on the way forward.
I will have that conversation. I have not had the conversation with them because honestly I didn't understand the significance of the issue in that particular institution. But we'll have that conversation also and see if we can convince them that this is the right thing to do, to ensure that the property itself, the collateral that secures the loan, is in fact repaired and maintained to a level where it is protected and the value of it is not diminished.
Now, once again, the Deputy Prime Minister is encouraging anyone with questions to contact their respective loan officer to discuss any further issues going forward. And now to another thorny issue. Repairs to the Grand Bahama International Airport could cost around $20 to $40 million. One of many structures severely damaged during Hurricane Dorian's assault on Grand Bahama. Tourism and Aviation Minister Dionisio de Aguilar telling members of the media that while the government seems to be the obvious candidate to purchase the airport, officials are actually waiting for the owners, namely the Grand Bahama Port Authority and Hutchison Whampoa, to decide to sell. Well, while many Grand Bahamians are encouraging the government to move forward with this purchase, a well-known attorney says he disagrees with this move. Megan Shepard has this story.
Attorney and former parliamentarian Greg Moss weighing in on the idea of the government purchasing the Grand Bahama International Airport from the Port Authority group of companies. For weeks following Hurricane Dorian, the airport was closed to international commercial flights and now still operates at limited capacity at the fixed base location. Moss says that although residents may be in favor of the purchase, he believes it would be a liability on the government.
It's a liability to the Grand Bahama Port Authority and it's a liability to Hutchison Whampoa because it's one of the few international airports in the world that's owned by a private company or private entity rather than a governmental entity. And governmental entities are able to limit their liability, both in terms of international conventions and by local law. Private citizens can't. And so the nightmare of the Port Authority and Hutchison Whampoa was that we would ever have a civil aviation disaster at that airport because one disaster would bankrupt both of those companies.
Moss says the situation at Linden Pinland International Airport provides proof that the government should not be involved in airport operations.
What the PLP did inexplicably in the last administration is it took over the management of the airport while it was being offered the ownership of the airport. It never made any sense. If you cancel the management, Well, first, because you have a management contract where the government manages the airport, the government has liability for managing the airport. And so that if there's a crash, it's going to be a civil liability on our public treasury. Cancel the agreement. Bring it to an end. And frankly, you don't even have to cancel it. Just threaten to cancel it. And the parties will come back to the table and we will get the airport. The airport has never been an issue. The airport is not a profit center. The airport is actually being disadvantaged because it has to deal with departure tax to the central government and the airport taxes to the Hutchison-Whampoa/Port Authority Group.
Moss adds that he is also opposed to the decision to purchase the island's anchor property, the Grand Tulukan Resort.
You bought a hotel that was a disaster zone, and you have not been able to restructure it and reopen it because of the mold remediation and everything else that's going on. You could have acquired it, but acquiring is very different than purchasing. The government has an eminent domain power to acquire, and it would have been acquired at its real value, not at the book value that Hutchison put to it. So all of these things come back to the same place. Are we willing to look progressively to where we want to take this country? And by that, I don't mean a political hint one way or the other. I mean, are we willing to look beyond what's right in front of our noses and think long-term and strategically and think in a sovereign way about what we're going to do with this country?
Megan Shepard, ZNS Network News.
Thank you, Megan. An ecumenical service is set to be held on Sunday afternoon to remember the victims of Hurricane Dorian. The death toll at Grand Bahama is now pegged at 10, with some 29 persons still missing. Now, that service will be held at Jubilee Cathedral, and that is being spearheaded by the Grand Bahama Christian Council and the Grand Bahama Port Authority. Vice Chairman of the Grand Bahama Port Authority, Sarah St. George, says prayers will also be lifted for those who lost close family members, friends, as well as colleagues.
Sunday, Lady Henrietta and the St. George family and the Grand Bahama Port Authority, all of us, under the guidance of the Christian Council, want to stand shoulder to shoulder with the families that have lost their loved ones, to remember those who've departed and those still missing, whom we may never see again. May their souls rest in peace. I believe this Sunday service will help to connect us even more. But I hope too that it will help to provide some closure to this turbulent chapter. Heal the wounded, fill the void, and give us renewed hope and strength as we approach the end of this year.
Now, transportation will be provided to and from Jubilee Cathedral for persons in Sweetings Key, High Rock, West End, as well as 8 Mile Walk. A number of students will also assemble at the Jack Hayward High School to take part in a march with the Bahamas Brass Band to Jubilee Cathedral. President of the Grand Bahama Christian Council, Reverend Dr. Robert Lockhart, says he is appealing to the entire community to participate in this service.
We want to encourage you to come and be a part of this historical event, and also all of the families of those persons who have been lost are going to be with us, and we want to take this opportunity to encourage them, to build them up and let them know that they have the support of the whole Grand Bahama community. And so we're inviting government officials, we're inviting churches, we're inviting schools, we're inviting the whole community to come and be a part of this service as we show support and solidarity as one people.
Now, the service is set to begin this Sunday at 3 p.m.